Hi guys, it's Kate, the Almost Book Doctor, and I'm here today with my February wrap up and my March TBR. So, in February, I read 4.5 books because I'm halfway through Royal Assassin right now. I have read it before, so I know what happens, but I will probably finish it in the next couple of days. I just don't feel like I want to count the whole thing for February. It's kind of a halfer. So I did read one book completely off of my TBR, and that was Assassin's Apprentice. I love this book. I love Robin Hobb. I love Farseer. Of course, I gave it 5 stars. And I finally reread it after reading it for the first time when I was in high school. And so it was very interesting looking at it with older eyes that have different tastes in reading and have had experience in the world and can relate to different characters in different ways. I'll get into that more in depth with my review that I'm doing on it. But I just really enjoyed this reread because since it had been so long, I kind of had forgotten most of what happens. I remember major plot points, but most of it was it kind of felt like I was reading it for the first time again. So I really enjoyed myself with that. And I feel the same way about Royal Assassin. I love Royal Assassin. It is my favorite of the three, mostly because it just makes me so mad. If you have read Royal Assassin, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to be finishing that in the next couple of days. And this coming Sunday on the 6th, there's going to be a live show on Any the Gates channel. And you should come check it out because it's going to be her, myself, and Gregory LaPerche, and we're going to be talking about Royal Assassin and all of the things. So when I get that link from her, I will put it down below. But for now, just keep an eye out. And if you haven't subbed to Anitha, I will put her channel down below. You should. She does some great videos. I think she does a really good job of succinctly talking about the books that she cares about and giving a very honest review about the good and the bad. She doesn't just like gush about all the good things and forget about the things she didn't like. The next book that I read this month was The Love Hypothesis. And I adored this book. This was 5 stars. It was wonderful. It was like reading candy. It just was the perfect thing to read around Valentine's Day. And I gobbled it up completely. So if you like romance, highly recommend just because it's romance but there's science and it's just fun. So I really enjoyed it. I will have a full review coming up soon for this book because I have a lot to say. I also read another romance novel, I guess you could say. I think I'd probably classify it as contemporary fiction, but it is about a relationship, and that is Alone with You in the Ether. That is by Olivia Blake, and it was one of her first novels before she wrote The Atlas Six, and it was phenomenal. She writes these characters as extraordinarily flawed people, and she writes mental illness in such a raw, honest, truthful, and accurate way. I don't know how she does it. I hope that she hasn't had to deal with these issues personally. Maybe that's how she understands it. I don't know. I never talked to her about it, but she writes one of these characters with a specific mental illness, which I don't know exactly what she's getting at. I thought it was bipolar disorder. That's what it felt like to me. Again, I am not a doctor yet, so I can't diagnose anyone. This is just my opinion on this book. But she wrote the spiraling, the destructive inner monologue, everything was just incredible. And it was heart wrenching and relatable. And I did not expect this from that book. I don't know what I thought I was getting myself into, but it was amazing. And so that was definitely 5 stars for me. I loved it. People should read that book. And then the last book that I read this month, I just finished today, and it was a rough read. And I read Mouse, so the first volume of Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And this is a comic telling of his parents' story about being in Auschwitz during World War II and their life and their survival and everything around that. And it's told, well, let me look at it. It's told as mice. Because it's animals, it has this layer that kind of separates you as the reader from the story a bit more, because instead of reading about these atrocities and the genocide and Hitler as humans, they're creatures. And it doesn't make what happens any less horrible. It doesn't take away from the tragedy of the story, but I think it allows the reader to have a bit of space between themselves and the book. And for me, I appreciated that because there's a lot of raw emotional stuff in this book. It's so short, but it's so worth it, guys. If you can get your hands on these, I would read them. It was really rough. I happened to get a copy because I live kind of in the middle of BFE in a very conservative area, and so not a lot of people were rushing out to buy copies of Mouse. But if you can get it, I would definitely read it. It's so good. There's a reason why it's so popular. There's a reason why people want a band, because it's raw and it's real. So definitely check out Mouse. And now for my TBR. Okay, so I have 2 books that I for sure need to get to this month. And then I have just a small stack of stuff that, because I'm a mood reader, I'm going to use as my like pool of things I'm going to choose from. So the first book that I am for sure reading this month is going to be Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is the last of the Farseer trilogy. I'm still reading Royal Assassin right now, but I will finish it the next day, and I'm excited to get to the end of the trilogy. I have not read this in a really long time, but I remember loving the last book. So, isn't it pretty? I'm also going to be reading The Winter of the Witch. This is the last in the Bear and the Nightingale Winter Night trilogy. I was supposed to read this last month, but I just did not have time with school. So I'm definitely going to get this because I loved the first 2 books, and I just know that I'm going to enjoy this so much. And winter's almost over, so I kind of got to finish reading it while there's still snow on the ground. Now, my little stack starts off with All the Horses of Iceland. This is very, very short. It's a novella, and it's like a magical realism story that is sort of a folk tale about the origins of Icelandic horses. And if you are not a horse person, you might not know that Icelandic horses are very different than like your conventional horses that like we have in America and stuff. They're very different. They're a very hardy breed, and this is going to be so good. I think I'm just going to sit and read it all in one day, probably. I love horses. I was a horse girl when I was a kid, and so like I just feel like I'm going to love this. Next on my list is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, because my secret is out. I DNF'd this book the first time I read it, and I just need to give it another chance because I love the Cosmere. And I feel like now I will be in a better place to read Elantris, especially now that I've read Brandon Sanderson's other work and I kind of know how he works, and I have faith that the story is gonna go places, I guess. I also just love this cover. Look at this pretty, beautiful UK edition of Elantris. I love it so much. So I'm excited to read this one. My next book is actually more Sanderson. I need to start my Mistborn reread because I have to be ready to read Era 2 starting in June so that I can be prepared for The Lost Metal when it comes out in November. So this is definitely going to start this month. I'm excited to go back to Mistborn and kind of revisit some of this stuff and remember exact details of what's going on, because some stuff was revealed in the Cosmere, so it'll be important to have all that fresh in my mind. Last book on my possible TBR for this month is How High We Go in the Dark. Now, this is a dystopian future science fiction where there's like a plague that's been released after there was like melting in the Arctic ice caps and stuff, and so some plague from long ago got re-released, and people all across the globe are dying. It's supposed to be really sad, but also really interesting. So apparently it reads sort of like a short story collection set in this world with a specific like apocalyptic thing going on, because we follow just a smattering of different characters, and their own stories are apparently very like separate. So I'm looking forward to this because I am a big sucker for the ancient plague being re-released trope, and I love dystopian fiction, so I'm looking forward to reading this. So those are the books that I'm looking at for this month, and I am going to be realistic in saying that if I only get through the 2 books that I really need to finish this month, I will be happy. I am about to start my cardio and pulmonary organ systems unit, and that is the most difficult unit in our like didactic portion of med school, just because the heart and the lungs and the circulatory system is so complicated, it's so important, and there's so much going on. So it's my personal favorite systems, so I'm going to enjoy myself, but I would be kidding myself if I said I was going to have a lot of extra time to read. So, wish me luck, and I hope you guys have a wonderful reading month. Let me know what you guys are reading in the comments. I love hearing your guys' TBRs and finding out when people are reading things that I am also reading so I can talk to you about them. And please like, comment, subscribe. I'd be ever so grateful, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.